Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Haltom City Council. We will come to order at this time. We're starting about 5 minutes late, and for that I apologize. We had a long, detailed discussion in our workshop that kind of ran into this time period, but we'll begin now with our invocation and pledge of allegiance led by Councilmember Dale Clark, and if you would stand for both of those, please.
Our Father, bless this council tonight as we are gathered to discuss the business of this city. Give us wisdom and insight as we deliberate so that the decisions we make will be the best interest for all our citizens. Bless our troops in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other troubled spots around the world. Keep them safe as they seek to protect the rights of freedom for us in this country and for others around the world. In your name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll begin tonight by welcoming all of you, those of you who are here in the council chamber itself, as well as those who are watching on our local access cable TV, both the live broadcast as well as the delayed broadcast. So welcome, and we'll begin tonight following the invocation and pledge with announcements and events. Mr. Muir, you want to introduce this for us, please?
Sure. Fran Burns, our public information coordinator, is going to brief us on a couple of things.
Thank you very much. I do have a few things I'd like to share with you, and to begin with, I'd like to share some good news. On behalf of our Keep Haltom City Beautiful program and the Haltom City Beautification Board, myself and one of our members attended the annual Keep Texas Beautiful convention, which was held a couple of weeks ago in Houston, Texas. And this would be my 17th meeting, and I really didn't want to go, but my board member did want to go, so I'm glad that I did, because despite the fact that I've been there so many times, I was able to learn some new things. And I was also able to get a couple of nice recognitions from the state that on behalf of our board. And there's a letter that was written by Joanne White, the president of Keep Texas Beautiful, to the mayor, and I'll just read the first paragraph if you don't mind. Dear Mayor White, on behalf of the Board of Directors, I'm honored to recognize Keep Haltom City Beautiful as a Keep Texas Beautiful KTB Gold Star affiliate. Haltom City is one of more than 330 towns, cities, and counties in our statewide network taking responsibility to care for its community environment. We commend your community for the programs that have been implemented to prevent litter, minimize solid waste, beautify public areas, and educate citizens. And so for that, we received a very nice Gold Star affiliate certificate. And then also this year, we were able to, in our information that we submitted, score a 90 and above. And so that's what this is for. We've done that for 3 years in a row, so we received an award for sustained excellence. So let me put these right here. Our board was founded back in June of 1984 to improve the community, and it was a citizen-led effort and continues to be. And every year we get the support of the council and the citizenry to make these improvements in Haltom City. And we always enter the Governor's Award, which is a competition to improve our city and to fulfill different things in 7 different areas. And we continue to do that because it inspires us to keep trying. And even though we've been doing it for so long, 21 years, we get more ideas and more programs every year. So if you have something for us that you'd like to recommend, we'll be having our planning meeting during August, the beautification board. So as far as other announcements, the Senior Center will be hosting a program on vision and preserving healthy vision for our residents, for the seniors, and for just anybody that would like to go. That's on Friday, July 22nd from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. And there will be muscular degeneration and other eye diseases, will be addressed. What is low vision evaluation, research and treatment that are available, and training in how to adapt your lifestyle to accommodate visual impairments. I should have worn my glasses to read this. Anyway, it's free and open to everyone. There'll be a special presentation by Dr. Merrifield at 11 a.m. And, of course, it's at the Senior Center. And if you have any questions, you can call them. Also, the library wanted me to remind everyone that the summer reading program finale is this Friday at 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and that's where they recognize the children who have done outstanding work in reading, and they receive certificates and prizes for all the books that they've read. It's a lot of fun for the kids. Also, the last thing I want to talk about is we've had confirmation from Tarrant County Health Department that a mosquito pool was tested positive for West Nile virus last Friday. They emailed Public Works on Friday, and I received the email this morning. They need to tell us about that because they just want the residents to be aware that West Nile virus is in the area. And Public Works is doing what they can by administering larvicide, spraying with pesticides, and letting the public know about these incidents. But the public also needs to be aware of some things that they can do to avoid being exposed to the disease. So we'll be putting out a flyer that's going to be inserted in the water bills, hopefully in the next billing cycle. There's also all kinds of information that I can put out on the website that includes the type of larvicides that we're using and the type of mosquito control spray that we're doing. Also, we update everyone when the spraying occurs via the website. And if there's someone here that does not have access to our website, which is, of course, www.haltomcitytx.com, I have some hard copies of the spray zones that are available for people to pick up. And that's all I have this evening.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind the council that positive test was in the area similar to where the first positive test was taken a few weeks ago. It was down around Hickory, south of 121. So it's in a similar area as the first test.
Councilmember Lanford and then Councilmember Hutchison.
Yeah, just wanted to ask you, could you look at that degeneration thing? I think it might have been macular degeneration on the eye
Okay.
piece, because that would be...
You're right. Macular
okay.
degeneration.
I just want to make sure that somebody was listening here would... Yeah.
My arms are too short anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hutchison.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were going to recognize this, Mayor White, but I think being recognized by the state for the Beautification Board of Haltom City, even after all these years, I still think it deserves a round of applause.
Absolutely. I've had an opportunity the last 2 years of doing I don't remember what it's called, I think it's kind of the litter patrol that provides the basis for at least part of the judging on this, and I've been very pleased both years at the efforts being made in Haltom City to keep Haltom City clean. And we went all over town and we looked at a lot of areas, and I think the state made a good decision when they chose to recognize Haltom City once again in this regard. Okay, let's go then to item number 1 on the agenda, our monthly financial report for May 2005. Normally, we would have done that at our last council meeting, but we didn't have our personnel here to do that, but we do tonight. And so, Mr. Joel Welch, our finance director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members. In front of you is the monthly budget report for the period ending May 31st, which represents 8 of the 12 fiscal months. I can report to you that overall the financial position of the city is quite good. I'll begin with the general fund is our custom. Revenues are progressing fairly properly. Property tax collections are pretty much on track. We will approximate budget for the year in our property tax collections. Sales taxes have been a positive point for us this year. They continue to be. There's a little bit more updated report on pages 8 through 12 in your packet than there is in the exact financial statement. We've already seen our revenue collection for this month as well, and our progress for the year is solid, if not strong. This is what I'm telling you this in excess of the audit collections that have been done for us by MBIA. The general economic health of our business community is good, and that is a contributing factor to the general health of the general fund itself. It offsets a couple of areas where we have not reached the targets we expected to reach, and they're the same targets I've mentioned before. The licenses and permits, of course. We had expected a bit better performance there, but our strength in sales tax is offsetting that decrease. Not getting quite the revenue that we had expected in the recreation center. I'm pleased to report that with the center being open, we're beginning to see financial activity stirring from booking of activities, and of course it's time now for the summer activities. So revenues are improving there. We're making some ground, so things are looking a little better there. But overall, our revenue picture in the general fund is quite good. On the expenditure side, everything is continuing to remain within budget parameters. Everyone is practicing good stewardship of their budgets, so the general fund looks in pretty good shape as we head into the last 4 months of the fiscal year. The water and sewer fund is, water sales have been improving the last couple of months. This hot, dry weather has been punctuated with just enough rainfall to keep property owners from losing hope and letting their yards die. So the revenues have improved, and our financial picture is getting better in the water and sewer fund. Of course, we're maintaining careful controls on the expenditure side of the house to make sure that the fund will come in good shape. Of the other funds of the city, of course, the 3 funds that are sales tax driven, the street reconstruction, the crime district, and the economic development corporation, are all doing well this year. The sales tax collections for them are in excess of our budget projections, and the expenditures for all 3 of them are staying within the appropriate parameters. Moving on to are there any questions on the budget side? Because otherwise I'm going to move on to the investment report. Yes, Mr. Sutton.
Talking about the Drainage Improvement Funds 05 on page 3.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions about that. Actually, one in particular. That is the new the drainage fund that was approved by the council.
Yes, sir. It is.
Okay. I notice here that there's capital of minus about $700,000 there. Could you explain some of these negative numbers there? I think it's an accounting practice, but I just want to make sure.
We made an accounting change. Originally, when we reflected the sale of the certificates of obligation in January, we reflected the receipt of the money and the expenditure of it in the operating fund. Subsequently, we examined our position on it and decided that it was better to create a capital fund for that particular bond issue, and we moved the expenditures into that issue. It shows up later in the report. I don't have what page it is in front of me, but it does show up later in the report for you to be able to see where that issue is. It's toward the back of the operating budget part. But that is why we have those negative numbers, and they'll straighten back up.
Okay.
Okay, council, if you would, let's allow Joel to go ahead and complete his report, and if we have any questions or comments, we can do that following his report. Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
please.
Mayor. I changed strategy on you. In the investment report, I am pleased to inform you that the portfolio is improving. Our earnings rate is again above 3% on average, and that is because of a better market situation for us. Our investment pools are earning around 3.2 to 3.25% on an overnight basis now. As our old securities are maturing, we are replacing them with newer purchases of securities that are around in the 4% range, where we have items that are 1.75 to 2% maturing The instruments replacing them are 4% instruments. So the overall performance of the portfolio is improving, and this is something to help with our operational needs. The size of the portfolio is relatively stable at about $34 million. Half of that money is in bond funds, and the other half is in operating funds.
Does that complete your report?
Yes, sir.
Members of the council, questions or comments? Not any? Mr. Muir, comments from you? Okay. Thank you, sir. We appreciate that report. We move now to the consent agenda that consists tonight.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes.
I don't think we need an action item.
That's correct. We do need action on the monthly financial report, so I am in line at this time for a motion and a second by the council regarding this. Councilmember Sutton and Councilmember Reese following.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the monthly financial report for May 2005.
Councilmember Reese,
That would be for a second.
motion, a second. Any discussion? Okay, there being none, if you will register your vote. And it is a unanimous vote for approval or for acceptance of the monthly financial report, and thank you for calling that to my attention. I'm always a couple of steps ahead of wherever we are trying to transition from what we're doing to the next item on the agenda, and I jumped the gun a little bit there. Okay, now we come to the consent agenda, consisting of items 2 through 8. This is considered to be self-explanatory, will be enacted by the council with one motion. Approval of this consent agenda authorizes the city manager to implement each of these items in accordance with staff or board recommendations. You have before you the consent agenda. What is the pleasure of the council regarding that? Councilmember Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we adopt the consent agenda as written.
Councilmember Holcomb?
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. If you will register your vote, I will display it at this time. Okay. Item number 9 on the agenda tonight is a public hearing regarding the final plat of a piece of property. And here to present this to the council is our planning director, James Pliska.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, citizens of Haltom City. Tonight's public hearing is the final plat. It is a replat, therefore the need for a public hearing. It is the 18th plat of 05. This is consideration and/or action regarding conducting a public hearing for the application of Alim Kasem on the final plat of Lot 13R, Block 18, Parkdale Gardens Edition, being a replat of north 40 feet of Lot 12 and all of Lot 13, Block 18, Parkdale Gardens Edition, in the M1 Light Industrial District, located on the west side of Delonte, containing approximately .518 acres of land and locally known as 2109 Delonte. The recommendation, the plat was recommended for approval to the City Council by the Planning and Zoning Commission on their June 28, 2005 meeting. Therefore, I formally submit the 11 by 17 reduced copy of said plat and 11 by 17 preliminary site plan drawing in accompaniment with this plat.
Okay, members of the council, before I open the public hearing, do you have any questions or comments regarding the presentation Mr. Pliska just made? Okay, there being none, I will open the public hearing at this time. Mr. Kasem, are you in the audience? Okay, I don't believe he is. We always give the applicant the opportunity to speak first. Do we have anyone in the audience wishing to speak either for or against the application of this final plat? Okay, there being none, I'll close the public hearing at this time. And Councilmember Lanford?
Yes, I had a question for Mr. Pliska. I don't know if this is pertinent, but on the drawing here, the big one, the site location there, this shows Lower Birdville to be south of Airport Freeway. I believe it's north of Airport Freeway. It just now dawned on me because I drove around for about 20 minutes trying to find this place yesterday, and I just now realized why I was so lost. Yeah, there's either the north-south indicator is upside down.
He's extending lower, right, he's extending Lower Birdville wrong, but it is south of 121.
Yes.
Right,
Yes,
right.
yes it is.
And since it is hand-drawn, it's really hard to tell. See, Lower Birdville runs into Lark, and so since this is a hand-drawn and not a CAD-drawn, he's not really extending Lower Birdville, but it's just a,
Oh, okay.
I guess it's some sort of,
Well, I just didn't know
linear
if that
designation.
had anything to do with how official this is.
yeah, I'll make sure that on
Okay, yeah.
the Mylar that is drawn a little
Okay.
better. And again, it's interesting, this is one of the few hand-drawn that I've seen in the years that I've been in the business. And a lot of the surveyors still do that. They don't do the CAD, they do the hand-drawn, and it is
Yeah,
perfectly
okay,
okay as
yeah.
it meets the requirements for a legal document.
Thank you.
Councilmember Reese?
Thank you, Mayor. James, I just needed just a little bit more clarification on one of the spaces in here when there's a loading dock that's 12 by 30 where an 18-wheeler is going to come in. We had an issue a couple of months back or a month back, whatever, to where the vehicles had to be moved around on, or I forget how it was phrased. They can't obstruct traffic on the
Correct.
roads. Okay.
Correct.
My
It is-
concern, and this is being in the trucking industry for 10 years, is the typical truck driver, when they come into a location such as this, because there's 2 parking spaces next to the loading dock, he's going to come in off of Delonte. I mean, this is a typical scenario to where he can do a straight shot backing, and the gentleman submitting all this is trying to tell you that the truck's going to pull in on the parking area and then do a turn to pull his rig back in there to back his trailer in. My concern is, in all honesty, that is not going to be done. You know, my drivers don't do that. They do a straight shot because then there's concerns of hitting stationary objects or hitting other vehicles. And 2 parking spaces there has got me really concerned.
Okay, in the ordinance, you cannot use the public right-of-way for maneuvering. So he has to maneuver on-site. The 2 spaces that he puts there next to the building, those are probably going to be loading and unloading too, because he meets the minimum requirement for spaces on his south side. So yes, it's going to be a tight fit, but he'll have to do what they call a T-bone when he goes in. He'll have to pull in and then back in. If it becomes a problem, it can be an enforcement issue.
And that would be up to who calling you saying
That would be
these
correct.
18-wheelers
It would have to be
are
a
doing
neighbor
this.
calling, requesting assistance that they're blocking traffic on Delonte.
See, that's the one issue I have a real serious concern with.
That's why we ask for these site plans with these plats, so that you know what is going to occur at the site. It is not generally required by the ordinance, but we do ask that the applicant provide this information. And of course, it does meet the minimum requirements of the ordinance. However, it is a tight fit.
Anything further? Councilmember Reese. Councilmember Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Reese, it's been a long time since I've done this, and you've been around them a lot more than I have. Going back to the map, if the truck pulls in and then goes north and squares up, as the cab comes back and goes to the left, the trailer goes to the left as you push the center to the right, correct? And if that being so, he's got this large area to pull in, then pull back into the driveway and square up a second time, correct? So the tightness, or the lack of tightness, will be over in the second parking lot, not where the 2 cars are. Because the cab will come straight back once the trailer starts to cut over.
That's where the cab will come, but when he goes to shoot in to pull into the dock,
He will pull back into the driveway he came in the first place,
maybe,
possibly.
possibly.
Okay.
If they were doing their job the way the law states, they need to do their job, then yes, they would. But these guys, you've got to remember, they have a 10-hour drive rule. These guys are pushing, I don't care if it says 10 hours, they're pushing 12 hours, they're tired. They want to back in and they want to go to sleep.
Right. That's why I asked you. I wish the owner had been here, but you see a lot more of them back than I do. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions, comments before I call for a motion? Okay, there being none, I'm ready for a motion regarding the wishes of the council on item number 9, the replat of this property. Councilmember Lanford.
Move to approve final plat P018-05.
Have a motion, Councilmember Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a second.
Have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, if you will register your vote. Madam Secretary, do you have the vote? The motion does pass with two nay votes. We move now to item number 10, and this is the first reading and a public hearing regarding an application for changing of zoning. Mr. Pliska.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, citizens of Haltom City. This is the fourth rezoning of 05, and this is consideration and/or action regarding conducting a public hearing for Mr. Richard Knowles of the first reading of ordinance O 2005-03115 for the rezoning of a portion of Lot 1, Block 1, Knowles Addition from the D Duplex Residential District to the M1 Industrial District, located on the south side of Lower Birdville and locally known as 5535 Airport Freeway, and to amend the city's comprehensive land use plan, locally known as the CLUP, from low-density residential to industrial. If approved, this zoning change will require an amendment to the city's CLUP. Recommendation at their meeting on June 28, 2005, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-1 to deny approval of the zoning change request from the D Duplex Residential District to the M1 Light Industrial District and to not amend the CLUP. I therefore submit a copy of the ordinance, and that needs to be tweaked a little bit, as well as Exhibit A, which is very important in that it shows the northern portion of Lot 1, Block 1, Knowles Addition that he's requesting for the rezone.
Okay, before I open the public hearing on this item, members of the council, any questions or comments for Mr. Pliska on the matters he's presented? Okay, there being none, I'll open the public hearing at this time. Mr. Knowles, are you in the audience tonight? Do you wish to address the council or just be available to answer questions the council may have? Okay. If you would, come on up to the speaker stand and give us your name and address for the record and proceed.
My name is Richard Knowles. I live in Colleyville, 4708 Shady Creek Lane. Reason I wanted to explain the reason I was requesting this zoning. I've owned this property since 1990, and it just sit there completely. It's of no use. I'm sorry. It's a have no use because of the fire lane that goes through there renders it, the size and shape of it renders it unavailable to ever be built upon. And I was talking with my banker, and just in general conversation, he said if that was ever rezoned, that would be of help to my line of credit and my borrowing power, get all my land up together. I also own that land in front of me at 5515 Airport Freeway is mine there. So that's the real reason for doing that, or requesting this zoning. And when I was here in front of the zoning board a couple of weeks ago, I only had one opposition to that spoke out, and that was a Mrs. Sparlin, Ruth Sparlin. She owns a piece of property within that 200 feet. I wanted to point out that Ms. Sparlin and her husband own 11 pieces of property, residential real estate, 9 of them in Haltom City. So this is really commercial. What she was complaining about, she has a piece of commercial property within 200 feet of mine, and she was objecting to that. And I thought that was more or less the kettle, or the pot calling kettle black. But at any rate, and I have that. If y'all care to. Just a few months ago, the city approved the insurance, the agricultural insurance company, which owns my land that we're talking about. They face Lower Birdville, and they were rezoned to commercial zoning, same that I'm requesting. So it'd just be a few feet over from what that zoning was. The zoning board, when I was appeared before them, they've had quite a few questions, but they were really concerned, seemed to me, like about what was going to happen to that land in the future, and they were concerned about parking issues. And of course, I didn't really know what they was going to ask, so I didn't have any of that information available. But I have 117 parking spaces around my property at 5535 Airport Freeway. I have 53 employees, so I don't think we're going to be making that into a parking lot. That's not what we're trying to do. We have more than double parking. As to what was going to happen to that land in the future, they have a big concern about that. I don't know, and I don't think they know, and my crystal ball doesn't tell me. But I can tell you what we've done there at Haltom in 5535 in the last 10 years in the way of sales tax. I didn't know this until we got to looking in this. That sort of surprised me. But since I moved my business there in 1990, September of 1990, I've paid in just sales tax alone to the state of Texas $962,669 in sales tax. Haltom City has received $233,374 of that. That averages out about $1,297 in sales tax a month. Now, we are a publisher, publishing law books, but we market them there, and we do it via telephone. We do this calling, and I publish law books and business books. We call both small business and attorneys throughout the United States. In fact, 90% of my business is outside the state of Texas. But on the sales tax, all of the sales tax is paid through here in Haltom City. There's not that many lawyers in small business in Haltom City. Most of it's in Dallas and Houston and the rest of the state. But we do pay that through here, other than the state giving it up and so forth. So that's about all I had. That's the reason we wanted to do this. And
If you would remain there just a moment, Councilmember Branson, you have a question for Mr. Knowles.
Yes, Mr. Knowles. In the back earlier during pre-council, the question came up, is this strictly sales and office, or do you actually have printing presses and do the actual printing of the books and that sort of thing at your facility?
no, we do no printing whatsoever, other than the office printing, HP printers and stuff like that. But we do not do any printing there whatsoever. That's all done off-site. In fact, that goes out, that's bid. Those are rather large jobs, and they go throughout the United States. MGM Printing gets some of it here, but that's always on a bid. And some of it may be in Georgia, some of it's in Maine, and so forth of that nature.
But you're not actually doing the printing at your location with the solvents and chemicals and...
None.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions for Mr. Knowles? Councilmember Lanford.
Before I have a question for Mr. Knowles, I would like to ask Mr. Pliska to clarify and help us remember. There was, as I recall, a narrow strip of property involved in the agricultural insurance there that was changed. I mean, this is a whole piece of property here, is it not?
On the agricultural insurance, the area in question was, I believe, the not quite as deep as this piece. If I remember correctly, it was just the landscape portion of the parking lot that was extending out to Lower Birdville, and I don't think it exceeded 100 feet. Whereas this is 200 and something feet deep. So I don't think it exceeded 100 feet, just off the top of my head. But his main was triggering development to the south, and that he was never going to use that area to the north.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Knowles. One of the concerns I have, and I think this is shared by some people on the council, is that we would like to see some sort of buffer between the M1, the manufacturing, and the residential. And I know you mentioned something about the rental houses being commercial. I wouldn't dispute that, but they are single-family homes. I mean, single families live there just like if they owned them. And the other thing is the land use plan actually says that this property, the plan for that is to be commercial, and that's a different animal from industry. So I will tell you, I'm not real happy about the M1 bouncing up against these residencies here, but what you're doing there doesn't require industrial zoning. It only requires commercial zoning. Is that something that you would be interested in? I mean, because that's the main concern that I have. And I mean, I understand that there's some implications there about what you can and can't do. But if you're truly going to just, be making phone calls, I mean, you could get away from to a C2, which is very. I mean, that's just office space, and that's a real nice buffer to high intense use up against the residents. And so that I don't know how we do that, but that would be something that I would certainly be attracted to, is just to have that whole piece of property be commercial property, something that starts with a C, a 2 or 3, and then that would be a pretty decent buffer. And I think that's probably the concern that the P&Z had. I served with some of those people and suspect that's what that was about.
But you're referring to the piece of property in question, yes. Not the whole strip.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could do either one. I mean,
I don't think we'd want to do the whole strip, but I would have no objection to the C2 or whatever, as long as it didn't, we could help
Sure.
our lines of credit and so forth.
Well, yeah, because what I was saying was you really don't need the M1 to do what you're doing.
Not back there, no.
And if you brought the whole property down to C, you'd be in compliance with the land use plan as well. That's I mean, it's just something to think about.
If that meets what was at our original plan.
I mean, I would not recommend you make that decision standing there right now. I think you want to talk to somebody and make sure that that's in your best interest too. But that's at least a viable solution. So either one of those, either coming back and asking for this property in question to be C2, or the whole property. That gets to what your banker's telling you, is getting all your property in under one zoning. That would do that, and that's just a suggestion.
Okay, well.
Councilmember Hutchison and then Councilmember Holcomb.
Well, I think Mr. Lanford kind of stole my thunder. But he's asking the same questions. After hearing you explain what you do with your business, sir, then my opinion is exactly the same. I think it's better suited to a C rating rather than an M rating, and it does fit well with our club. Plus, it fits well as a buffer between the families and the single-family dwellings and the duplexes that are around there at the same time. So, might suggest that while we may deny an M1 rating, that you could come back with a C rating request to our planning manager there, and get the same thing. I appreciate the fact that you've been here for a while. You're faithful about paying your property taxes, and we have no problem with that. I just feel like that probably your request is more suited for a C rating. So that's my opinion too. I agree with Mr. Lanford on that.
Mr. Muir, I think you need to jump in here before we go to Councilmember Holcomb.
You can go ahead and go to Mr. Holcomb. I'll save mine for afterwards.
Councilmember Holcomb.
Thank you. Yeah, likewise, with the two council members just spoke here. I just wanted to make sure you understood what they were talking about. It wasn't just changing the little section in question to a C zoning, but they were talking basically to achieve what your banker and you had discussed. You'd have to change the entire piece of property, being the little section we're here looking at tonight, as well as what your office sits on currently. Did you understand that?
Well, I thought he said either one. Is what,
Well, I mean, of course, you know, we're really not looking at clearing the title for your financial purposes. But at the same time, we understand why you're here. So we're trying to explain that you can solve both of these issues, you know. But it's something like Councilmember Lanford said, it's not something you'd want to decide here. It's something that, you know, you would want to discuss with your banker and make certain that that's the right plan for you. But changing the zoning would involve both pieces, what you currently have aside from this, as well as the little strip going up to Lower Birdville. I just wanted to make sure you understood that, that's all.
yeah, and that would make it difficult because this whole block is an M1, and then that would be throwing that right in the middle of that, a C2 or C1. If you look at this map, all that along Hemlock, with the exception of 2 homes, is an M1 zoning. And then that property to the west of me is an M1, and in front of me is M1. So we need to look at that pretty hard.
Mr. Haltom, could you restate what you said? I'm a little confused.
Okay. We all understand that Mr. Knowles is here tonight in order to, basically for financial reasons, he's trying to clear the title up with his banker so that he has more borrowing power. I know I can get it out in a second. And the whole reasoning behind that is he's got 2 pieces of property that butt together here, but they're zoned separately. Am I understanding that correctly? Okay. So his banker has recommended that if it was all the same zone, I was merely backing up what Lanford had said about the C2. When he mentioned that to Mr. Knowles, it appeared to me that there was a little bit of confusion going on. I was just trying to make sure that he understood it all needed to be the same thing for the commercial zone. Am I confusing you even more?
No,
Am I making
no,
sense?
I'm understanding you. I'm not.
I may not be
I'm
using
not
the right terminology, but I'm
sorry.
trying to learn.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Mr. Pliska, do you need to make a comment at this point?
Yes, sir. Again, we want to clarify for him that, and we want to suggest to him that instead of just doing the piece to the north in a commercial, you would still have the split zone problem that's associated with the lot. But if he's agreeable to go ahead and do the whole lot to downzone it to a commercial zone, I believe working with Wayne's office, we might be able to do a plan development commercial district such that we can avoid the spot zoning issue, since there's no commercial district adjacent to it that you could extend.
Do you need to make a comment?
If I had to make a comment. We certainly can look at this, just a couple of comments about the logistics of this. One, of course, since we've only advertised the one piece of property to the north that fronts on Lower Birdville Road, we can't take any action tonight. This would have to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission with new notices to everybody within 200 feet of the larger piece of property that would also be subject to rezoning, and then get Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation and come back to the council on that issue. But I think from what I've heard, council members are simply saying that they may not be comfortable with the M1 zoning on the property that fronts on Lower Birdville Road, but they might be comfortable with a commercial zoning classification if you were willing to rezone that piece to a commercial classification as well as your larger tract that abuts it to commercial. There would be a way of accomplishing that if the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council were in favor of that zoning classification. Of course, that's going to be the ultimate question, whether or not you believe that's appropriate zoning. The larger piece of property, if I recall from looking at the comprehensive land use plan in the other room, is already designated for a commercial type of use. That is the proposed land use plan for that area. So that zoning would be consistent on his larger piece of property with what the council has already approved as being the future use of that property. So there would be no issue there. The smaller piece of property that we're looking at tonight, again, would still need to be revised on the comprehensive land use plan because that is currently designated for low-density residential, and you would have to decide to go in a change in direction and determine that it's more appropriate for commercial use than low-density residential use at that location.
Mr. Knowles, any comment from what the attorney just said before I recognize Councilmember Lanford and Councilmember Sutton?
Well, we'll take a look at all this and then may come back.
Okay. Councilmember Lanford?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify an understanding of what spot zoning consists of. What I heard was that if we make this a C zone here, that it would be spot zoning because it's M1, surrounded by M1 on both sides. You just pointed out that it would bring it into compliance with the land use plan. How can it be spot zoning? It looks like to me the spots would be the M1s on both sides, not the C.
The Supreme Court has tried to give us guidance on what is spot zoning, and they've basically said that we don't know how to describe it. We know it when we see it, but we can't tell you how to find it yourself. But bottom line is you're right, Councilman Lanford. One of the key elements of the Supreme Court that we have to look at is whether or not the zoning is in compliance with your comprehensive land use plan. That's the first issue they look at. They want you to respect your plan. And since your plan already provides that your vision, the council's vision, 3 years ago when you adopted that plan was that this property would ultimately be zoned and used for a commercial use. So that's certainly the very first element of trying to bring property uses into compliance, and I think we can justify, based upon the different categories of zoning in this area, that would be an appropriate zoning category. Again, though, your vision would be sustained by looking at the other properties when they come up for rezoning and determining that they're probably also suitable for commercial zoning rather than industrial zoning in that area.
Mr. Paliska, you look like you need to say something.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, that's fine. That was spelled out very good.
All right, Councilmember Sutton and then Councilmember Hutchison.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Knowles, I want to appreciate you. Thank you for coming tonight, and just I want to say that this council wants to be pro-business growth in what you're trying to do there. That's an excellent idea. We're faced with two things here. One is that we've got. Oh, go ahead and have a seat. That's fine. But we're faced with two things here. One is the buffer up at the northern end of the property with the residences there, and getting that into conformance with our land use plan. That's one of the things we're struggling with. And the other thing is struggling with the entire parcel, whether or not we can do something more along the commercial lines, which would be more in line with the commercial use plan. Now, we would like to make this a win-win situation, a win for your business, a win for the city, if possible. So would you be amenable to us tabling this tonight so that there's some time to for you and the staff to explore this and see how we can get something else that may be a bit more amenable to both your business interest and the city's interest? Yes, sir.
Mr. Knowles, we need you to come back up to the mic so our people at home and so our official recording can pick up what you're having to say, please.
Yes, sir.
It was my understanding from years back that insurance building was zoned all the way back, same as that my piece of property. So I don't understand the zoning that just happened, but if it was zoned M1 just a few months ago, and you didn't have a concern about that at that time, I don't know where your concern is about this 200-foot property here. That's confusing to me, but
We need to do our homework on that one, too.
I'm amenable.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Hutchison? Okay. All right. Councilmember Holcomb, wait just a minute. He may have something for you, Mr. Knowles.
I'm going to give it a shot here. With what you just expressed just here recently about you didn't quite understand it. I'm trying really hard to, Mr. Knowles, to understand this, but when I was in attendance at the P&Z meeting, I believe what I gathered from it was the fear there with this M1, I mean, there's some pretty, without being against businesses coming in, okay? Because I'm not trying to do that, but there's a certain amount, a certain type or style of business, certain noises, certain amounts of traffic, things like that that you want in a residential area. And the fear here is that if that was zoned M1 with the duplexes that are very near there, we're trying to see down the road of what's going to take place. It very well could be that land could be sold to another company, and the next thing you know, we've got a big sheet metal fabricator immediately across the street from some of those homes that are down there. But at the same time, we're trying to be sympathetic to the small businesses. We know that that's important, and we want to be viewed upon as we're trying to work things out in these small situations. So that's the only fear with the M1 per se.
I'd be glad to be amenable to doing the first 150 foot of that as a green belt, much like the insurance company has done, and that would give the residents that kind of a space.
Well, that's very appreciative. I don't know that we necessarily have any kind of power to do that here tonight. I think that's a totally different situation, but that's exactly what Haltom City's looking for, is just that give and take relationship with the businesses, so that we can make it a better place for everybody, not just one or the other, you know. So okay. I do appreciate your time and your patience, though. I don't necessarily know all the right words, but I'm really trying here, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. We've heard from the planning director. We've heard from the applicant. Do we have any member of the audience who wishes to speak either for or against this request for a change in zoning? Okay, there being none, okay, we do have one. Mr. Grzan, if you will, give us your name and address for the record, please.
James Grzan, 6208 Little Fossil. This area, I think Jim Sutton made a wise decision. I believe this council should table this and go drive this area. Don't just drive down the road. Drive through Mr. Knowles' parking lot. Drive through the other parking lots. Go to the other side of the freeway. This area is an industrial lot. The freeway. This area is industrial, like it or not. That's what it's going to be if it's going to develop. There is some older homes in the area, and the older people are leaving them, and they're going to be vacant. And in order for the property to bring good money, it will have to be industrial in the future. That's the whole thing of this area. I think if you'll go drive the area, drive both sides of the freeway, drive blocks around it, you'll see that it's basically high commercial use and industrial. And that's, I believe you'll want to take another look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Grzan. Yes, Mr. Watkins?
Bob Watkins, 6140 Blue Spruce Circle. Well, I was going to leave this alone until my friend Mr. Grzan got up and spoke. There's two or three things that I have opinions on, and there's some things that I don't know. I have a tendency to believe that that particular piece of property, where it's situated, would be appraised higher if it were commercial than if it were industrial. And a few weeks ago, there was a discussion in pre-council about Well, it was called downzoning. I prefer the word rezoning. Downzoning agitates people, business people. But this particular situation is something that y'all are fixing to look at, running around and do just the opposite from what was being asked for here. You're putting yourself into a situation that sooner or later you're going to have to run along and change back to what it should be. I'm sure y'all know that you can't table this because that hasn't got anything to do with anything. It's got to go back before the planning and zoning, so tabling doesn't work. But I believe that there's a line, there's always a line as to where something is industrial, something is commercial, something is residential. That particular house that he was speaking of that the Sparlins own, that house was originally bought from Lloyd Hicks, and it was bought for the use of the Sparlins, one of their children at the time, I think since then. But you can't really say that because somebody owns residential property and they own a bunch of them that may be a business, but you can't equate that to a real commercial thing. But I would believe it'd be a win-win thing for Mr. Knowles for y'all to go ahead and turn it down on the first reading or whatever, and him to go back and discuss it. As you said, you can't make that decision standing here, but I believe the property will appraise better as commercial, and then as the other properties come along. The thing about any zoning is it goes with the property. If he dies, sells, anything ever happens, if you zone it M1, it's M1 forever, and you can't plan on what the next person's going to do. There's a lady that's more than somewhat older than me, lives next door to it. If this was to be zoned M1, at some point down the road, that a property is going to become available. And if Mr. Knowles is not the owner of this M1 property, and the owner at that time decides to buy the property next to it, that person's going to be here telling you, well, I want it for M1, that's what's next door. So you're starting a chain event that you don't have to start at all. I can't understand why anybody would want to do otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Councilmember Sutton, before I ask anyone else in the audience if they wish to speak on this.
Sure. Wayne, what are our options? Mr. Watkins raised a good point there, and I'd sure like to know what our options are at this point.
Well, I think Mr. Watkins was saying, he wasn't saying that you didn't have the authority to table this. He was saying it just wouldn't do much good because it needs to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission if we're going to consider rezoning the larger piece of property to commercial.
I see.
The question is, are you ready to make that decision tonight that that's the direction you want to go in, or would you prefer to get some more input from staff on some issues before you make the decision on whether to encourage this gentleman to go back to P&Z and come forward with a commercial zoning application? And just for the record, and for Mr. Knowles in particular, obviously what we're talking about tonight, if he feels encouraged to come forward with a commercial zoning classification, we don't know what will happen at the Planning and Zoning Commission and what their recommendation would be on that, or whether a majority of this council would ultimately approve that, and that's always something that's unknown, and obviously we can't give him any guarantees tonight, but I think what I'm hearing from the council is that there are some council members who are uncomfortable with M1 zoning on that northern piece of property, but they might be willing to consider commercial zoning on that northern piece of property if it's rezoned with the other piece of property as commercial also. And that's about all we can say. If that's the direction you want to go in, then really what makes sense is to deny this zoning tonight and have Mr. Knowles reapply for the commercial zoning on both pieces of property. That's really the option, I think, because there's nothing to send back to the Planning and Zoning Commission on his larger piece of property. It's not before them, it wasn't before them, and he really needs to make a new zoning application on that if that's what you want to see him do. Alternatively, of course, if a majority of the council is in favor of approving this as is, then you can do that tonight. It will take a 3/4 vote of the council to override the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation of denial. But that is an option you have also.
So effectively, what a tabling does is put off the decision for whether we're going to kick this back to the planning and zoning or whether we're going to address this issue right now, to give Mr. Knowles and the staff time to talk about the options before we actually begin to head down a direction. Is that correct?
Yeah, the reasons that I can think of for tabling this are, one, if you want more information from staff before you make your decision, or two, if you want Mr. Knowles to ponder the issue of whether he thinks it's in his best interest to consider the suggestions that have been thrown out tonight, and then come back at your next meeting and say he either is in favor of doing that or is not. And
Precisely, and that's, Mr. Knowles, why I said the tabling motion is would you want some time to ponder these things before we made any action, either to go back to planning and zoning or to do something tonight, vote on it tonight? I'm sorry?
I prefer you go ahead and vote on it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Council Member Lanford.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick stump. The only land use plan that I've recall being through was several years ago, and we talked about what the future would be along this area and all over Haltom City, and we had, as I recall, maybe one citizen and 3 developers from outside the city in attendance at public meetings. And so this goes to, for those who are listening and out in the audience and on TV, this goes to the importance of public input, because I will tell you, I've heard it suggested seriously that we make heavy industry from Haltom Road east and from Belknap south, all the way through 121 industrial. The residencies there's some residential pockets there. They're very nice residencies. And Mr. Watkins is exactly correct. You get heavy industry or industrial creep every time you let something go by, and then he's exactly right. Several years later or a few months later, somebody else wants to rezone and make more intense use, and that's how we got here. And it points up a real need for us to address this as a community, say what it is that we want. What do we want our community to look like? Do we want that to be commercial along 121, or do we want it to be industrial? That's up to us as a community. We get to say what it is, and then it takes a while to put it into place, but we can do that. I just wanted to stump on that. Thanks.
Okay, anything else from the council? The public hearing is still open at this point. Do we have anyone else in the audience wishing to address the council regarding this application? Okay, there being none, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and I'm now ready for a motion regarding Mr. Knowles' application for a change of zoning. Councilmember Lanford and then Councilmember Holcomb.
Move to deny Z00405, first reading.
Councilmember Holcomb.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to deny. Any discussion on the motion? If you will, register your vote. And that is a unanimous vote. Mr. Muir or Mr. Pliska or Mr. Attorney, is everybody clear on what we have just done and the action that the council has taken and where this can go from here?
You've just denied his zoning. This zoning case is dead. If he wants to consider reapplying for commercial zoning on his properties, he is able to do that, and staff will process it just like this case was processed.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure everybody was clear. We've had a lot of discussion on that. Okay. We move to item number 11, and this is an ordinance on first reading regarding matters with boards and commissions. Mr. Muir, you want to introduce this item for us, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, as you know, the last couple of workshops, you've been discussing amending the boards and commissions ordinance. This is during Chapter 2, Article 2 of the Code of Ordinances. As a result of those meetings, we've presented an ordinance to you for consideration that does a few things. It better defines a quorum for the boards and commissions, changes how council contacts are selected, not council liaisons, but how council contacts are selected, that the council would be appointing those positions, and that it better defines the departmental administrative support that the Animal Advisory Committee receives. And I think in the workshop previous to this meeting, I think there were some comments made about some possible changes. I'm sorry, I did not note those changes. Did City Secretary make those changes? Brenda, can you review for the citizens what those additions were, please?
Under section 2-93, there was a correction. We are going to clarify they, which we're going to clarify by saying board/commission. Right. And then also under section 2-148, there is a clarification. This ordinance was done a long time ago, and where it says advice and available services from city departments as directed by the city manager, we're going to go back to our legal department and more clearly define what that means.
That's right. We can still pass the ordinance tonight and still make that change for the second reading.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, then, can we clarify for legal counsel, do I understand we want to just take out the reference to available services and just say that the committee will receive reports and advice from city departments? Okay.
Okay.
Anything?
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the extent of our report. I'm sorry. But the ordinance is there. Obviously, you guys have reviewed it, but we're available to answer any and all questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Muir, for your introduction of this. Members of the council, any questions or comments on this? I know we have discussed this for the last couple of council meetings. We have had this information in our packet since toward the end of last week. We've had a chance to look it over. I don't see anyone indicating a need for questions or comments, so I'm in line for a motion regarding the wishes of the council on item number 11. Councilmember Sutton, I believe you were first with your light on, and then Councilmember Hutchison.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move to approve ordinance number 0-2005-032-01, amending Chapter 2, Article 2, Boards and Commissions.
Okay, this is a first reading of that ordinance. Councilmember Hutchison.
Yes, I'd like to affirm that with a second and make sure that those editorial comments are added into, or the changes that the city secretary just read are read into it also.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve on first reading. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, if you will, register your vote. And that passes by unanimous vote of the council.
Just for clarifications, let the council members know at the next meeting we'll have an ordinance that has those additional changes redlined for you also, so you will get another redlined version of the ordinance.
Okay, we come now to the Visitor Citizens Forum portion of our meeting. This time is set aside for any person having business before the council that is not scheduled on the agenda to have an opportunity to speak to the council. Those who have submitted one of these speakers' request forms are granted 6 minutes to address the council. Those who have not submitted this and wish to address the council after the council meeting started will have a 3-minute time to address the council. All comments that are made during this portion must be directed toward the presiding officer rather than to any council member or staff. Each speaker must limit his or her comments to the subject matter listed on the speaker's request form and must refrain from personal attacks toward any individual. Council cannot discuss or debate any issue brought forth at this time, nor can any formal action be taken since this is not a posted agenda item in accordance with the open meetings law. Okay. Having said that, our first speaker tonight, Ms. Patricia Conley. Ms. Conley wishes to address us on Haltom City Citizens Advocacy Commission. If you will, give us your name again and your address for the record, please, and we will proceed. You have 6 minutes.
My name is Patricia Conley. I live at 3913 Kirby Street, Haltom City, and I would like to kind of put forward a motion again to find out whether or not the council or the people have looked into the proposal I give to them back in February. I know you had a lot of stuff going through your heads and everything, but I would like to wake it up again. It's Haltom City Advocate Commission that I talked about. We have gone through three workshops and getting things together and talking it over with one of the council members and some of the citizens, and I was hoping that I could kind of refresh some people's memory and see if I could get them to comment on what is going on and if they have made any headway on it and everything, and see if they've come up with anything appropriate that they might be able to tell us in the near future. I'd appreciate a little bit of input from it when they get time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Conley. Our second speaker tonight, having filled out one of the speaker's request forms, Mr. Ray Eklund, wishing to address the council at this time on better government.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Ray Eklund. I live at 2532 Oakwood Terrace. Let me tell you, it's a pleasure to be back in Haltom City. I wanted to address the council tonight on a letter that I had given to the Economic Development Corporation of Haltom City probably 3 or 4 months ago. I gave it to the members at the meeting. And the reason I'm addressing it to the council is that 4 of the members of that board sit on this board, and the ones that don't sit over there appoint people. So there is no format for me to address that board, the Economic Development Corporation, directly. And my letter had requested that the Economic Development Corporation reformat their meeting agendas just slightly to put a format resembling what we do here at the council meeting, that would give a specific time for citizens to address the Economic Development Corporation. I think it's important that this city tax gathering organization that comes through the city and goes to the Economic Development Corporation, that they have an opportunity to hear the citizens' input as they come forth to their budgets each year, and actually their meetings along the way. Their next meeting will be held on July 14th, which is this Thursday, and I reviewed the posting out here in the lobby, and it says that they have 2 things on their agenda. One is approving of the minutes from the prior meeting and discussing of the 05-06 annual budget. That does not guarantee the citizens an opportunity to speak. I have, in fact, been at meetings where citizens were not allowed to speak who had even prior sent letters. That troubles me in that this organization that receives our tax dollars doesn't have a method to hear us. So those of you that sit on the EDC that sit here tonight, I want to address that. I think we'll get better government when we can hear the people speak. And if you'll review the letter that I've given to the EDC, you'll see that I'd asked for a couple other things. One, to have a citizens forum time, even though the law would not permit them to take any action, the same as here, because it wouldn't be an agenda item. At least it would be open for discussion like we do here. Right? And second was for a review, at least in executive session, on your agenda of your projects every month and your work that your staff is doing over there. I think without those 2 things on your agenda, you're kind of walking around in the dark. And I understand that you may want to conduct some of those in executive session. I understand the reasons for that. But at least it would be on your agenda so you could do it. And the way your agenda keeps being published, it doesn't permit those things much. And again, I think we'll get better government as we listen to the public and the public better understands the meeting. So again, that meeting will be on July 14th at the Fire Hall. And it's important. It's a big part of our budget. It's a big part of where we're going in our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eklund. Councilmember Bransom has her light on, and then Mr. Watkins.
Thank you. Wayne, it's true that in the citizens forum we can give a statement of fact, isn't it?
That's correct. You can give factual statements
right.
or a recitation of city policy on something.
All right. I'm looking at the Haltom City EDC Corporation posting for Thursday night, and it's a public hearing to conduct the budget. So a public hearing does invite citizen input.
Is that correct?
It's exactly what it is. Even last Thursday night, citizens could have said something if they wanted. They declined to.
I just wanted to be sure that everyone realized that it was the public hearing for the budget so that they would have an opportunity to offer their input into the EDC's
You're
budget.
exactly right.
Okay, Mr. Snow, I think Mr. Watkins had started up here first, so, okay. Mr. Watkins? Mr. Snow, Mr. Watkins deferred since you're so close. You do understand that because you didn't turn this in at the
3
beginning,
minutes.
you've got 3 minutes, so we're...
Get her going there.
We're ready
Turn
to
that
go.
hourglass up.
Thank you, sir. Give us your name and address.
My
for the
name
record,
is
please.
Gene Snow, 5719 Airport Freeway. And I have a problem with the EDC being open, as Mr. Eklund said. Now, Ms. Branson said that it's a public hearing next meeting, and there will be opportunity for the public to speak. My question is, does it only have to be about the budget, or can you actually address the EDC? Wayne, sir?
My recollection is that the public hearing is on the budget.
Only?
Next Thursday, only the budget item.
Okay, like Mr. Eklund said, how do we get to know more about the EDC that we fund through our taxing? How can we question them? How can we find more about their agenda? Or how do we even get on their agenda? Is it a closed deal, a secret society that we're unable to get into? How do I get in to speak to them and get some answers from them? I can't even address them like I can here, where you guys can't even talk back. It's a secret society, and I don't understand it, whoever's listening.
Do you have a comment, Mr.
Yes, sir. Well, he can't comment. Well, maybe he can, being the attorney. Are you able to comment?
I would suggest that you contact Tom Muir, who's the executive director of the Economic Development Corporation, if you have any issues that you want him to take to the EDC, and it's his decision whether to take those items to the corporation.
Is that right? He doesn't have to take them if he doesn't want to?
Well, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay. It is kind of a closed deal, and it's not able to be pried open. So I do appreciate the opportunity to at least make my comments known, as most people knew already. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. Mr. Watkins?
Bob Watkins, 6140 Blue Spruce Circle. Well, I was going to talk about one thing. I'm going to talk real fast. Well, I'm going to talk about the thing I came up to talk about in case I hadn't got time to talk about that. I'd like to see it put on the agenda, next time's agenda, something about this mosquito business. For years, before any of y'all were here, except for Mr. Olson, this has come up all the time. The citizens call in and tell you that they want mosquitoes to be sprayed. Well, y'all are supposed to lead, and y'all are supposed to do what is best for the city, what is financially best for the city, and not let a bunch of people call and talk you into doing something that is not the best thing to do. And I think everyone sitting up here probably knows it. I think that I know Public Works knows it. So I'd like to see this put on the agenda and have a discussion up here so that you could tell the public just exactly what getting out and spraying these mosquitoes does for them. I'd say, well, it only costs $5,000. Well, if that $5,000 means that you're paying $100 a mosquito or more because you're not killing any mosquitoes, then it's not only $5,000. And I believe this is a waste of money. I would like to have it discussed. I'd like to know how many cities in the surrounding area do this. I understand that Fort Worth doesn't. I may be mistaken about that, but that's what I heard a while ago. And I'd like to see this discussed more openly so that y'all will tell the public, I know what you want me to do. You want me to get out here and spray because you think it's going to do some good. But the truth of the matter is that if you believe that spraying for those mosquitoes is going to cure everything, then you probably also believe that frogs cause warts or something. I mean, I think this is an old wives' tale. Addressing this EDC meeting, there isn't the opportunity, and there should be the opportunity for the people to speak. I agree with Mr. Eklund on that. I agree with Mr. Snow on that. The only thing I would say is that I have never, ever thought that 4 people on the council ought to be on that. You shouldn't have the voting majority, 4 people out of 7 in that position. I've never thought that. I didn't think it when all of y'all weren't on there. I didn't think it then, and I certainly don't think it now. And there's one amongst us that didn't think it at the time, and we'll discuss that some other day. But it should be so that the public can speak and voice their opinions. And I understand that this next agenda is not that way because it's not posted that way. But I understand what Mr. Olson says, that it's posted to a public hearing on the budget. What Mr. Snow is talking about, and what I've squirmed around once or twice, I'm sure y'all just love to hear me get up and talk on Thursday nights too, but every now and then the people that come, and there would probably be more people come. I don't know whether you want more people to come or not, but there'd probably be more people come if they didn't think they was going to have to sit there and y'all just talk in a not quite loud enough voice, by the way, also. There's us old deaf people can't hear. So y'all are over there whispering. I don't know what you're saying, but it doesn't make any difference because I'm not going to get to argue about it. It should be posted on the agenda that the public gets to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Councilmember Lanford.
I just wanted to bring out some facts. I think that we're able to do that.
Okay.
Fact.
And we have an attorney down here that's listening.
He can keep me on the facts.
Will keep us on the straight and narrow regarding that.
Fact. This is a public forum. As you pointed out, 4 of the 7 members of the Economic Development Corporation are here. This is a public forum. It's on TV. All the citizens get to hear it. We don't televise the EDC meetings. So anything that needs to be said to the EDC can be said right here in front of everybody. Everybody in the world can hear it said, and that's public, and it's okay. The second fact is that the EDC has citizen members. And citizen members are not the same as elected members. Is that fair to say? They don't have the same set of expectations when they sit on a board that elected officials. I mean, when I get elected, I know that I'm going to get some sand in the eye, and people are going to get riled, and they're going to yell at me and disagree with me. I know that. Am I still being more or less factual here? More or less, okay.
I didn't know you got sand thrown in your eye. I didn't know that was a fact, Mr.
But I just want to say that citizen members have a different expectation than elected members on that board, and rightfully so. And this is public. Anybody that wants to say anything about the EDC can say it right out here on television where everybody can hear it, and that's fine with me. I want them to do that. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Sutton, statement of facts.
Statement of facts.
More, not less.
That's pretty good. Well, Wayne, I need just clarification here. The ordinance of the EDC, as I remember it, called for 3 citizen members, and the president and the vice president would be elected out of those citizen members of the EDC, which means elected members cannot be a part of the management leadership of the EDC, and that the ordinance also called for 4 elected members from the council to be a part of the EDC. And so we're just following the ordinance by doing what we're doing. Is that correct?
That's probably accurate, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else wishing to address the council? Councilmember Branson.
I apologize. A citizen was talking to me, and maybe Mr. Sutton made this statement of fact. And if my statement of fact is false, I'm sure Wayne will set me straight. Does the state of Texas not set forth how the membership of an EDC is set up?
The state law on a 4B corporation, which is what we have, provides that at least, that no more than 4 members who are employees or officers of the city may be on the Economic Development Corporation. It specifically anticipates that up to 4 members may be officers or employees. The remaining members must be people who are not officers or employees of the city.
Boy, I feel like I get to be an attorney now and go, so is it true that we are not doing anything out of the ordinary by the makeup of the Haltom City EDC?
It's not unusual to have 4 council members on an Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Snow, are you wanting to speak again? Normally, we do not allow that. However, I will use my discretion as the chair of the meeting tonight, since you may not have known what our rules are this one time. I don't want to set a precedent, because what we have in our procedure is each citizen has a chance to address the council either for a 3-minute period or a 6-minute. You probably used yours up already, but for tonight, and tonight only, I'll give you an opportunity to address the council one last time.
I want to apologize if I was rude a while ago. I had a hard time getting it set in my mind that I could address the EDC. It's now been brought to my attention that to address the EDC and really sort of be on their agenda, so to speak, would be to do it at the council meeting. I didn't know that was proper. So therefore, my frustrations of being unable to speak to the EDC due to what Mr. Lampford said, maybe I can take care of it here. And I'd like to be a little nicer about it. I'm sorry, I just was frustrated and couldn't get into there. And now I realize, since I know everybody here just about, that I can approach the EDC through this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. Mr. Lewis. This is Dan Lewis. You want to give us your name and address, and you have the 3 minutes allocated, please.
I won't take that long, but I'm Dan Lewis, a 17-year resident of Haltom City. I live at 4812 Springview Court. I just wanted to say, I don't remember whether it was Mr. Snow or Mr. Eklund suggested that the EDC not be made up of 4 people from the city council. I like the idea of having elected representatives there, and business and residents, with the majority being elected, because as our city has found out, we have certain recall rights if we need to exercise them, as our fair city has shown the world. But I like the idea of having the 4 elected members on the EDC, and that was all I had there.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Since I gave Mr. Snow that, I'll give you an opportunity, but I'm not going to do it next time. This is not a precedent-setting deal. There are extenuating circumstances. So 3 minutes, Mr. Watkins.
Bob Watkins, 6140 Blue Spruce Circle. What I'm saying is that it's, to start with, something that some of y'all have said over the years that I don't agree with, and that is, you are citizens. You're elected, but you're citizens. I wish everybody would quit thinking that if you're on the ZBA, you're not supposed to talk, or if you're on the council, you're not supposed to do this, or if you're doing this, you're not supposed to do that. You're citizens. You do not lose your citizenship because you're sitting on the council. So what we have is 7 citizens on our EDC. All I'm saying is this, it is the EDC brings things to the council. I'm saying that it is ridiculous for 4 out of 7 people to be sitting members of the council when the state law says up to. I'm saying that it's ridiculous to go down here and sit around all evening, talk amongst themselves. The citizens don't have any input. Then to appear up here, and the 4, although one of them can't vote up here, they've got the controlling vote down there. That is not proper to me for the EDC to have 4 members out of 7. That means if those 4 members decide what they want to do and the other 3 don't like it, that's the way it'll be, and then they bring it up here and present it to themselves. This is not right. This is not right. And once again, one of the members vocalized that in the past. I think that was all the rebuttal. I can't remember what my friend Mr. Lanford said, but you all are citizens. I want you to quit playing like you're not citizens. You've got every right of all the rest of the citizens, and some.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Watkins, and I do want to be on record with my colleagues up here and with our citizens. I've granted a little leeway tonight. I don't want this to be a precedent. I want us to, beginning with the next council meeting, we'll go back to the way we have been doing it without the second opportunity to speak type thing that we've done tonight. Okay, do we have anyone else? Now, Ray? Now, this is what happens. You open the door just a little bit, and that's why.
Well, actually, I wanted to speak on this.
Whatever you're going to do it quickly and do it tonight, and no more.
Okay. Well, I put in my slip the first time. That gave me the 6 minutes. Regarding the Eklund 2532 Oakwood Terrace, the comprehensive land use plan, I was the citizen at that meeting at the library many years ago. It was the worst public meeting I've ever been to. They split us into little groups, and I was sitting there with 3 developers, and they were trying to hash up people's neighborhoods. Right? It was a very poor way to run a meeting. Y'all weren't there. We hired somebody from the outside to run it. It was a terrible meeting, and the sooner we have another one and get that fixed, the better. Title 10 from the law people down there in Texas tells us what to do under the EDC. The law is 95 pages long. It's waiting on my computer for me to get home and read it. Okay? Tonight, we do not get to address the citizen members of the EDC. They won't get to hear our arguments directly. We won't have any interaction with them. We may, in fact, put a bug in the 4 members' ears, but it's not, I don't believe, Mr. Ryanford, the best place to address those issues, just like you wouldn't address beautification board issues up here. If you have a board to address them, you go to the board. I believe that would be a better way to address those things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eklund. Okay. No one else wanting? No, Dan, you cannot. No, that's all for tonight. The Visitor Citizens Forum portion of our meeting has been addressed. And we'll move now to item number 12, resignation of board members. Do we have any resignations? Okay, there being none, do we have any appointments or reappointments? There being none, item 14 is not relevant tonight. The council will move at this time into executive session as authorized by section 551.071, .073, and .074, and will return here to take any action on any item discussed at that in executive session. Ladies and gentlemen, the time is 11:16. The council is back in open session following the executive session. There's no action to be taken by the council on any item discussed in closed session. We therefore stand adjourned.